This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic. What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. It is July 19th, 2021. My co-host Luke Sylvia on a Disney vacation this week, so I am joined by the one and only, the Sixth Man Show producer, content contributor, Kevin Tucker. Kevin, what's going on, man? Thanks for filling in.
Dude, not a problem. Happy to be here. Slightly jealous of Luke. I wish I was kicking it at Disney right now, but that's okay. Hanging with you comes in second place.
Well, I just want to say, I do have Disney passes. I live kind of close to Orlando. Been a while since I've seen Luke in person. I didn't get the memo. You know, I knew he was coming to Florida.
Ouch.
I didn't get the memo. It was going to be a Disney thing.
Ouch.
Boy,
didn't get the invite
busy this weekend, so I wouldn't have been able to make it anyways. But the invitation is always the nice thing. Am I right?
Yeah, it's the thought that counts,
Right.
and there definitely was no thought there, so that hurts a little, doesn't it?
It does a little bit. Like, sometimes you're like, I would have liked to have gone, but I wouldn't have been able to. But sometimes it's like, I didn't want to go to that thing anyways, but I would have liked to have been invited and then rejected you anyways. But anyways, we hope Luke is having a good time. We hope that he gets back safe. But yeah, so Kevin here is rocking with me. We do have a very, very special episode for you guys today. A little bit later, we're going to get to our interview with Kevin Clark that we recorded earlier in the week, actually, Luke and myself, before he headed to Orlando. So make sure you guys stay listening all the way throughout the episode for that. That was a lot of fun. We got to talk to Kevin Clark from The Ringer. He covers the NFL for The Ringer, if you guys aren't aware. But we got to talk about the Jamahl Mosley hire. We talked about the young guys and the future and the draft and everything like that. So that was a lot of fun. Really appreciate Kevin Clark taking the time to do that. A couple of housekeeping things before Kevin and I get into some news and things like that. So a lot of you already know, but the Orlando Magic are hosting a draft party the night of the draft at Amway Center, July 29th. That's starting at 7 o'clock. A little bit before that, from 5 o'clock to 6:45, myself, Kevin, and a bunch of other Magic fans, we are going to be at Harry Buffalo, downtown Orlando, again from 5 o'clock to 6:45. Just hanging out, having a good time, having a couple of cold ones, eating some good food, things like that. So come hang out with us. Then at 6:45, we'll walk over to Amway. We're all going to sit together, section 106. So make sure you guys remember that. If you're not able to make it to Harry Buffalo, then sit with us, section 106. We're going to be recording, getting some content stuff for the podcast and the YouTube channel. So make sure that you guys come out for that. Outside of that, the team is growing since Kevin's come on, a couple of months back. Things have been going pretty well. We've started some new things. We've been doing kind of the meetup things. We want to keep that going. We're looking to expand our content a little bit. So we're looking for an event/meetup coordinator where you'll help us put together, fan experience type of things, get people together to, watch Magic games and things like the draft party and things like that we're doing. One of the prerequisites or requirements for that is you must be located either in or extremely close to Orlando. Obviously, most Magic fans are in Orlando, Kevin, so we want to try to keep that going, keep the meetups that we've been doing. It's been a lot of fun. People have been enjoying that. So, and then we're also looking for a writer. So we are going to be applying for NBA credentials this season, Kevin, with the Orlando Magic. Fingers crossed on that. Absolutely. So we're going to be looking for somebody to write and cover the team and potentially cover the team really closely, attend games and everything like that. So we might be looking for more than one writer. I can't say too much on that right now, but it would be a major benefit if you were in or near Orlando for that position as well. So if you guys are interested in, again, either being an event meetup coordinator for the Six Man Show or writing, covering the team for the Six Man Show, shoot us an email and your resume to info@thesixmanshow.com. We're going to be, kind of taking in more candidates over the course of the next week, and then we'll set up interviews and all that good stuff. Anyways, Kevin, we've bored the people long enough. The NBA Finals are getting incredibly interesting. So you, myself, Luke, we talked last week about pre-finals predictions, and then maybe we were changing our mind on some things. I told you and Luke that you kind of scared me off of my pick, but now the Bucks, they're up 3-2 in the series, Kevin. First of all, what did you think of the game last night, and have you changed your mind at all?
Yeah, well, first off, before I talk about last night, let's back up a little bit. A week ago, this time, we're recording this really late Sunday night. We recorded last week, really late Sunday night, and at the time, I think the Suns were up 2-0 and had a lead in the first half of Game 3. And so at the time, my Suns in 5 prediction was looking really strong. And then it all literally went downhill from then on out. Literally, obviously, the Bucks coming back and winning that game and now winning 3 in a row to go up 3-2 and with a chance to win it in Milwaukee on Tuesday. Are you kidding me? But as far as last night, man, unbelievable. What a finish down the stretch. The Suns once again having a big lead early on, and these Bucks, man, I don't know. They keep showing away, keep finding a way, and it's sometimes through Giannis. Drew Holiday kind of kept him in the game in the first half, like he was really strong, and then Chris Middleton, what the heck, man? I didn't know he's a good player, but you're like, playoffs, whatever. But he's showing up in big moments for them.
So this just came to mind. This is not premeditated or anything like that, but I am a big, big New York Giants fan. Magic are number one, obviously, but a ways behind them, really head and shoulder. It's like the Magic are up here, the Giants are here, and then everyone else is like just kind of towards the bottom. Chris Middleton is doing his best Eli Manning impersonation right now. Okay,
break that down for me, please.
Solid regular season player, right? Eli made a couple of Pro Bowls. Chris Middleton has been an All-Star, but in these playoffs, and like Eli Manning would do in the playoffs, Chris Middleton is he's been an elite player in the playoffs. I said it in the first round, and this is going to be a freezing cold take. I'll make sure to retweet it if the Bucks win the title. But I tweeted May 22nd. I said the Bucks cannot win a title with Chris Middleton as their second best player and without a legitimate closer. Chris Middleton has been a legitimate Robin to Giannis's Batman, and he keeps closing over and over and over again for the Suns. He did it against the Nets. He did it against the Hawks. Now he's doing it against the Suns. So I'm really eating my words. But last night, man, what were the Suns were up a couple of points. Drew Holiday steals the ball from Devin Booker, going down the court. You see Giannis running the wing, and you're like, there's no way he's about to throw the lob with seconds left in this game. Sure enough, throws it. Giannis catches it. I'm talking to Carmen, my wife, today. If you watch that play in slow motion and Giannis dunking the ball and hanging onto the rim as his momentum is carrying him back, had the rim disconnected from the backboard in that moment, Giannis is going 5 rows into the stands.
You're right.
Just all that momentum. That was honestly incredible.
Man, I tell you, I don't remember which game it was, if it was game 3 or 4 when he had the block on Ayton, and you thought, oh man, if the Bucks win, that's the moment. That was an amazing moment. And it was. But then last night happened with the alley-oop in the last minute of the game. With contact and everything. Oh, my goodness. I mean, that was, if they hold on to this 3-2 lead, that's the moment right there. That's the one. It's like, this is it. That's crazy.
The crazy thing for me is, the minute before that, Giannis missed both free throws.
Yeah.
So for him to get that moment and just staring down the camera and flexing, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. But that was just an awesome moment. And then today people are talking about, he's in midair. And obviously, you're Chris Paul. You're a much smaller guy. You're trying to do anything you can to put Giannis in the line in that moment. But that is such a dangerous play. Put both hands on a guy and shove him while he's midair. That really could have went.
He wasn't just in the air. He was going fat, like you said. He was flying. That could have been bad.
Could have been very bad. Thankfully, it wasn't. But people are talking about, Chris Paul's history as a dirty player, which is fair. However, in that moment, at those stakes, Chris Paul is doing anything that he can to try to foul and put Giannis on the line there. But what a play by Holiday. What a pass. What a catch. What a finish from Giannis. Chris Middleton playing out of his mind. I mean, I was excited at the beginning of these finals because it was, it wasn't the LA and Miami and that kind of stuff. But we have really got a really, really good series. Sometimes you get these teams that not all the big markets care about, and then the series ends up being a dud, and you're like, okay, well, this is why we want big markets. But I'm just glad that they're really justifying the hype around the NBA Finals. So what do you think is going to happen?
Man, it's hard because I still like the Suns, but it's hard to argue over 3 in a row, and especially that game last night almost felt like a backbreaker. It's never over. But man, the Suns were at home. And by the way, really quick, just kudos to both their fan bases. Like last night in Phoenix, that place was crazy. And the game's in Milwaukee, and I know, dude, Game 6 in Milwaukee is going to be nuts. So kudos to them. But anyway, the Suns being at home, they had the lead early, and they had a lead late and chances late. You just felt like that may have broken their back. We'll see how they come out in Game 6, but Game 6 is going to be fun for sure.
Now, I want to go back to my freezing cold Middleton take, because if they win, of course I'm going to try to make excuses so I don't look like a complete idiot, but I just feel like this is such a strange year with what happened with the Nets, with Kyrie not being healthy and James Harden not being healthy. Every year has its caveats with injuries, but this year I think we all can agree that the whole season was so injury-riddled across the entire league. I'm not trying to take anything away from either of these teams. Whoever wins the championship is a champion. They completely deserve it.
That's right.
I just feel like it's such a weird year that if you're Milwaukee or you're Phoenix, if you don't win this year, you're just going to be like, man, that was our chance, and we blew it. Like, I would be incredibly surprised if either of these teams are at this point next season. Do you feel the same way?
100% agree. 100% agree. And especially, I hate to keep bringing up the Suns, but like Chris Paul,
he's only got so many.
If he gets to the end of this series and doesn't have a ring, dude, what is that going to do to him? Like you said, he's only got so many years left. I don't mind Chris Paul. I'm not a huge fan, but I'd like for him to get a ring. But yeah, if he doesn't get this opportunity, man, you don't know if he's going to get back. Obviously this is his first time in the finals. It took him this long, however many years he's been in the league. But man, that would hurt him for sure.
I think it's over in 6. I think Milwaukee closes it
feels
out
that way
in 6.
It does. It feels that way.
When you start talking about like the greatest players of all time and all the great players that we've been lucky enough to have in this league, like Giannis is the next guy, and I just don't think. I mean, the guy's leg, like, what was it, 3 weeks ago, bent the complete opposite way than it's supposed to bend, and he was going to be out for the rest of the playoffs and maybe even the next season. And for him to be playing the way that he's playing in these finals is just absolutely incredible. And it's hard for me to picture anything getting in his way. I think we're going to have like a incredible Giannis performance. If Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday can play anywhere near the level that they've been the last few games, I just think it's over and the Bucks are going to take it. But we'll see. The great thing about this series is I really won't be upset whoever wins it. Like, I love Devin Booker. Chris Paul definitely deserves it, but if it's the Bucks, I'll be pretty happy about that. And then a little bit more NBA news here, Kevin. So it was announced this week that in all likelihood the play-in tournament is going to be brought back next season. Quickly, I just wanted to ask, how do you feel about that, and what are your thoughts on the play-in tournament? Are you happy? Are you upset?
Yeah, I mixed, and here's why. The original play-in tournament we talked about last season in the bubble, there was a criteria that had to be met for the play-in tournament to kick in, right? They had to be within so many games of whatever seed was above them for that play-in tournament to kick in. This season, though, on the other hand, there wasn't that. It was just point blank, no matter what, it's going to be seeds. 7, 8, 9, 10 are going to go in this play-in tournament. And, if that's a close race, I like the play-in tournament. If teams are a couple of games apart, but this year, I don't remember what it was, but it was San Antonio in the West who was 10th, and then they went into this play-in tournament, and they were something like 8 games, 9 games back, something like that. Crazy. I mean, that's too many when you think about the course of a whole season, for that gap to be that big, and they still have an equal chance at getting in the playoffs. That seems a little far-fetched. So I like it if the races are close. I don't like it, just to say for whatever, we're going to do 7 through 10.
I am exactly right there with you. I love the idea, but there needs to be a criteria. It's not fair to the 7th or the 8th seed to be 7, 8 games up on some of these other seeds and then have to essentially play to make it into the playoffs at that point. To me, I'm going to go out and say it should be 5 games. 5 games is close enough. Like 3, 4 games, like you're still right there. That's a couple of weeks in the NBA. Right. But if you're 5 games out, like a lot of times that takes weeks to like catch that up in the regular season. So I am excited that they're going to continue to do it. However, I feel like, let's say, the first 7 seeds are all super close and then there's a significant gap and there's 8 and then there's 9 and 10. 7 should not be, basically punished for being, like you said, 9 or 10 games up on like the 10th seed. I just think that's ridiculous. There is a way to do this so everybody kind of gets what they want, but at the same time, I think it'd be like, the 1 seed playing the 16th seed to see, or the 15th seed to see who's going to go, into the first round or something. It doesn't make a ton of sense in that regard. I get the league is trying to draw up interest and keep things exciting, but still some kinks to be worked out, and who knows, they might actually implement that next season, but I think it does need to be tweaked a little bit. So, Kevin, since we last recorded and everything like that, the Jamahl Mosley hiring is now official. We've had, press conferences. We've had an Orlando Magic pod squad. He was on the Woj pod, all that great stuff. So what were your initial thoughts now that we've really seen Jamahl Mosley, heard from him, heard what his philosophies are, and kind of, we're learning about Coach Mosley now?
Yeah, for sure, and you hit it on the head. Learning, he's a guy that doesn't have a ton of history in the spotlight, right? So there's not a lot of things you can look back and find on the internet. So we're kind of learning more about him as he speaks. And so, in my mind, those were a couple different areas, couple different ways he represented himself, right? In the press conference, I thought he was one way, and in the interviews, he was a little different. And so what I mean by that is, the press conference, I almost felt like he was a little nervous, which I would be too. This is his dream job. It's what he's worked for his whole life. 14 years as an assistant, waiting for this moment, the right moment for him to step up and be a head coach. So I totally get the nerves, doing a press conference and everything. But I will say one thing that I really did enjoy from him in that press conference was he, unlike a lot of coaches, there's a lot of coaches who kind of dance around answers and they give a nice, long, fluffy answer for the media that gives them quotes and everything. But Coach Mose was asked a question and gave the answer. He didn't feel like he had to add words or, dance around a subject or whatever. Asked a question, gave an answer, asked a question. Really straight shooter, and I kind of like that. It was kind of refreshing, something a little bit different. But then I think we saw a different side of him when we saw him in the pod squad and the Woj pod, but especially the pod squad. If you watch it on YouTube, especially, see him gather around with Dante and George Galante and then Jeff Turner, of course. Just a more relaxed atmosphere. He was able to laugh it off and just chat it up with the guys. And so it was cool to see a couple different sides of him. But, yeah, definitely like what you see so far. He seems a little more laid back, a little more personable and relatable, and I think it's going to go a long way with the guys.
Yeah, when he sat down with the guys in the pod squad, I don't know exactly where at Amway that was recorded. I've never seen that area in Amway, but it definitely seemed like he kind of loosened up the tie a little bit when he sat down. And your point about him being very direct and just saying what he meant and meaning what he said and nothing else. At times it was like he'd be in the middle of a sentence and just stop, and he was completely finished. I was like, is he going to say anything else? Or, okay, that's your complete answer. Okay, that's fine. But yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I definitely got the vibe that he was a little bit nervous during that press conference, and who is, and especially if he's not a guy that talks to the media a ton, and as an associate coach, you're really not. I remember, what was the guy's name? Was it Rich Higgins a couple of years ago, an assistant coach under Steve Clifford? Whenever he would have those, interviews at halftime, you always felt like he wasn't totally comfortable speaking in front of the camera, and that's how I felt with Mosley. Mosley's a little bit more confident, but again, when he got with the pod squad and was talking to those guys in more of just a casual conversation, you could really see his personality come out. And the biggest thing for me in, each interview, whether it was the press conference or either the podcast that he did, was him continuing to talk about the fact that you need to really treat these guys like they're humans first and then worry about all the basketball stuff later. And then he was asked, specifically on the pod squad, what he learned from, Coach George Karl and everything like that. And he talked about, there's an old, and I'm paraphrasing here, but there's an old school way of doing things. But nowadays, players, they require different things. They want to meet you on more of a personal and relational level. And he said, you can still, do those old school things, while, treating these guys the way that they want to be treated, essentially. And I think that's exactly what Magic fans were looking for and what the front office was looking for when they were going through this hiring process. What did everyone say about Penny Hardaway and why he would be such a great fit? Because he's going to relate to the players. He's going to, kind of meet them at their level, and really keep them engaged. And I think that's exactly what we've got with Mosley. He's everything that we would have been excited about a hire in Penny Hardaway, but also NBA coaching experience. So you kind of get the best of both worlds there with Coach Mose. So I was super everything that I've seen from this guy. And then what we saw that the Magic released on Twitter just like a couple of days after he has the press conference to be announced as the head coach, working out with Mo Bamba at the Amway practice facility. And when we say working out, guys, if you haven't seen that clip, like he was working out, like heavy contact, talking to him, coaching him up, encouraging him. I guarantee you Steve Clifford was never, ever out there with Mo Bamba. That's not a knock on Clifford. He's kind of an older guy, okay? Probably not the athlete that Coach Mose is. But, Kevin, when you saw that clip, what were your initial thought, your reaction to that?
Man, that was really, really cool. Because like you said, it wasn't just like, okay, Mo, do this. No, it's like we're going at it. It was all in the paint, man. It was all paint work. And so he's backing him down and bodying him up and everything. So, yeah, that was really cool. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He's not one to say, okay, why don't you go work on that with so-and-so. He's gonna say, I'm going to do it right now. Let's do it. Let's work on it. And so, number one, that's cool. But also, number two, it's a really busy, hectic week for him. All this press stuff and media stuff, but also figuring out, his assistant coaching lineup. And then we've got a draft next week. So for him to take some time just to go one-on-one with Mo in the gym, I have a feeling it probably meant a lot to Mo as well. I think that was just really cool just for him to set aside some time for one of the young stars of this team.
I got to tell you, man, like, I texted you and Luke kind of during the press conference, and I was like, okay, he seems kind of nervous. But then when I saw the pod squad, especially when you watch the video, I think that obviously adds such another layer to that, and you get even more of a feel for his personality and everything like that. But I was like, okay, I'm starting to warm up to this guy. And then when I saw that, Kevin, I fell in love with Coach Jamahl Mosley. Like, I saw that, and I was like, especially Mo, I think, needs that hands-on, and not just the hands-on, someone to work with him and kind of show him what he needs to be doing, but the encouragement. Like, he's telling Mo, he's like, bump me. He's like, no, bump me again. He's teaching him, get the guy all the way out of the paint, then you can call for the ball, make your move towards the rim. And then when Mo's doing it, he's like, yes, sir, yes, sir. Like, when you've got a guy like yelling, yes, like, that's just the best type of hype man there is. So seeing that for Mo, and then he's going to be doing that for all of our players at some point or another. It might not be once training camp, and more guys start getting in the gym. He probably won't have as much time to give kind of that one-on-one type of coaching and everything like that. But especially for Mo, this is such a critical year. Like, this is make or break year for Mo Bamba. If Mo doesn't start to look like a legitimate NBA center this season, it might be all you wrote.
Right, yeah, and like you said, not only big for Mo, but you also think about, the kind of the ups and downs that Mo has had over his career so far, his short career. But you think about him playing for Clifford, and this wasn't ever public, but I feel like we can all read between the lines that maybe Mo and Clifford maybe didn't see eye to eye or whatever, or at the very least, Mo wasn't happy with the playing time that he got for most of Clifford, right? And so we get this new guy, this new coach comes in, and for him to make a connection super quick like this, in theory that he is doing, the desire, I hope, that Mo has to play for this new coach, I think, could go a long way. Not just going out there and proving it for himself and for a new contract or whatever, but playing for someone that you count on and you believe in. That could just go a really long way for him.
I think we, like, fans just collectively in that moment were like, forget about the players. We will run through a wall for Coach Mosley at this point. Like, you see that and you're just like, that is my coach. All right, like, let's go. You don't know too much about him. Again, we're still learning. Who knows what he's going to be like as a game manager and with the X's and O's and everything like that. But that alone, like, that went a long way with me. So really excited to see that. So some more coaching news. Coach Mosley in his introductory press conference talked about the fact he's going to work very closely with the front office and with management to start to kind of round out his coaching staff. So we got our first bit of basically assistant coach news today from Jake Fisher with Bleacher Report. He announced that assistant Portland associate head coach Nate Tibbetts, it looks like he is nearing becoming an assistant coach under Jamahl Mosley with the Orlando Magic. So Nate Tibbetts, he was an assistant in Portland for 8 years, the last two as the associate head coach, which is like the the Dwight Schrute, like the assistant to the regional manager position, I guess, if you want to call that, Kevin Tucker. But 3 years as an assistant in Cleveland under Mike Brown with Jamahl Mosley. So you already know that they have that relationship there. Obviously, Nate Tibbetts was in Portland with Terry Stotts, Kevin. So a lot of people are like, okay, maybe this is a way to kind of get Terry Stotts in the door. No idea whether or not right now Nate Tibbetts is going to be the associate head coach for the Orlando Magic. But what do you think of that hire, and what do you think of the odds of maybe bringing Terry Stotts in as well?
Yeah, hard to say much about Tibbetts. One of the things we joked about, right before we started recording was there's not even a Wikipedia page for Nate Tibbetts, so there's a lot of unknowns about him, Don't know a lot, but like you said, he was in Cleveland the same time as Coach Mose, so obviously there's definitely some familiarity there, and obviously Mosley was like, he really must have enjoyed his time working with Tibbetts enough to bring him to Orlando, 8 years later, whatever it's been. So that'll be interesting. As to whether, that connection with Stotts might play into this here, I probably don't see that. I'm not sure I see him coming on as an assistant. But maybe, I think that'd probably be great to have an established head coach coming under Mosley to be kind of that right-hand man to help Mosley as his first round of being a head coach. But I don't know if I see it.
I don't see it happening either, but I would like the idea of it. I think most of us have agreed that if you're bringing in a first-time head coach, it's good to bring in somebody that has head coaching experience into the fold just to kind of show them the ropes and everything. Some people have asked me, whether it be on Twitter, on Instagram, if this means that guys like Ty Corbin and Pat Delaney are on their way out. I don't know that this necessarily means that. Ty Corbin especially, if Stotts isn't coming with Tibbetts, a guy that has head coaching experience in the NBA, has good rapport with the Magic and with the organization. I would like to see really both of those guys stay on. I wouldn't be mad at that at all. It doesn't look like Steve Clifford is going to have a job in the NBA this season, which I think you really wanted the Pacers job. That didn't happen. They went with Rick Carlisle, but we'll kind of wait to see what happens with that. But I'm excited. Looking back and just a quick Google search of Nate Tibbetts, is he's been in the discussion to be an NBA head coach for the last few years here. So I think this really is going to be a good hire. Again, him and Jamahl Mosley have the relationship going back to Cleveland. So it looks like the everything's in motion for Mosley to start putting together, his assistant head coach and his staff and everything like that. So I had you watch it right before we got on the podcast to record here. But there's a clip going around Magic Twitter. I think Adam Papagiorgio was the first person to put it out there. Earlier this year in the playoffs, Michael Porter Jr., when the Nuggets were playing the Trailblazers, Michael Porter Jr. shoves Nurkic from behind, and Tibbetts comes flying from the other end of the court all the way down and starts talking trash to Michael Porter Jr. Basically, you can't see his mouth. It's covered by a mask. Basically, don't put your hands on my guy.
Yep.
And the whole Nuggets team is like, bro, you see Aaron Gordon waving him away. So, first of all, we've got Coach Mose telling LeBron to STFU. And now we've got Coach Tibbetts running across the floor to yell at somebody, basically, get your hands off my guy. We're putting together a pretty scrappy coaching staff. What did you think of that clip, Kevin?
I was about to say, man, first off, that guy does not lack energy. If that clip says anything, that dude was a lightning bolt. But secondly, I was going to say that, edge, Kevin Clark actually talks a little about that in the interview you guys will hear in just a second. But yeah, so far, if he's the assistant like Jake Fisher's reporting, that's some edge between the two of those. It's a definitely an interesting start to this coaching staff.
What I'm guessing you've watched Mosley's international highlights with the double collar pop. What do you think of that?
Boom.
I didn't ask you about that.
I think I texted Luke. I just want to throw out a prediction. I guarantee you guys at home that at some point this season, Cole Anthony he's going to do something in a game. And he's going to, pay tribute to Coach Mose. He's going to go, boom, boom. If there's one guy on the team that's going to do it, it's going to be Cole. And you heard it here first.
I can promise you if that happens, Magic Twitter is going to implode. And it's going to be the best thing in the entire world. So.
Absolutely. I will say, though, I think at the very least, Magic fans should make it a thing this season.
Absolutely.
Something big happens. Come on, let's do it.
Great
just like
substitution, coach. Let's go. Something stupid like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Man.
All right, that's basically all I got, Kevin. You got anything else before we get into the other Kevin Clark here?
Yeah, this interview is awesome. You guys are in for a real treat.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick ad break, and then we'll get right into the interview with Kevin Clark. All right, guys, the Olympics, Euros, baseball, major championships, and concerts are all in this summer. You know what isn't? A wild and hairy bush. Tame yourself below the belt with help from our friends at Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. Their 4th-generation performance package includes the brand-new Lawnmower 4.0. If an athlete treats their body like royalty, why not treat yours like Olympic gold? Fellas, do right by your boys and join the 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com with the code SIXTH. That's SIXTH at manscaped.com.
The world is starting to open, and the Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped is here to help you get ready. Inside, you'll find their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Crop Reviver toner, plus 2 free gifts, Performance Boxer briefs, and the Shed travel bag. Talk about a world-class dismount into a post-quarantine world. This package is the perfect package for your package and peak performance in whatever sport you desire.
So guys, get 20% off and free shipping with the code SIXTH at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code SIXTH, SIXTH at manscaped.com. Achieve pubic glory this year with Manscaped. All right, guys, we are now joined by Kevin Clark of The Ringer, one of the most notable Magic fans out there, and some would argue one of the only Magic fans out there. But Kevin, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hey. I'm doing great. I'm really, really excited to be here.
Yeah, man. I mean, you could argue how many Magic fans are out there. I mean, your buddies at The Ringer, whenever the Magic get brought up, it kind of seems like there's no one out there, and you always get brought up.
I do. I will say, so a couple months ago, we hired Steve Cerruti, who's a producer on Ryan Russillo's podcast, who's also a big Magic fan. He didn't grow up in Orlando. I'm actually seeing him tomorrow, first time in a while. So I'm sure we'll talk about Mosley and all that. But so now we've doubled the number of Magic fans. And as I joke about, by 2024, maybe we'll have as many Magic fans as Celtics fans. That's my goal.
That's gonna be tough over there with Bill. But no, yeah, Cerruti, big fan of Cerruti, back to the SVP and Russillo days. But that's awesome. But yeah, Kevin, so as everybody knows, you're a big Orlando Magic fan, diehard Magic fan, grew up in Orlando, really, really close to the downtown area near the arena. You mentioned even closer to, the Amway Center now. But we wanted to ask you, obviously the 1995, the finals run and everything like that. What would you say are some of your favorite early Magic moments?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that anybody who grew up who's my age, I mean, I caught the tail end of like the pre-Shaq years, which were like Reggie Theus being the biggest star in town. Most people wouldn't even remember that. I'm in my early 30s. And so, I mean, guys like, Sidney Green, Greg Kite, Mark Akers. I mean, names nobody cares about because they were a terrible expansion team. And the thing I always joke about with the Magic was like Orlando was a really small town back then, really small. And the fact that it had an NBA team was kind of a joke. And the fact that then we go from a really bad team for a handful of years, then we get one of the biggest superstars in the history of the sport, and then get another superstar. And I always joke, there's a lake by my house where they filmed the Super Bowl commercial with Tyra Banks and Lil Penny. And I think it aired during the Steelers Cowboys Super Bowl in the 90s. And I remember watching it and being like, oh, that's normal. That's cool. That lake by my house in the Super Bowl commercial. And then I was like, wait a second, this is not normal. Like, this is incredible. This is happening in my city. Like, the more distance I have from the mid 90s Magic, I just feel like it was such a special time when that 30 for 30 came out. I feel like I just glossed over it because I was like, 6-7 years old, and I was like, okay, I guess every kid has this. I guess every kid has Shaq in their backyard. I guess every kid has it's one of the most fun teams to look at that's played in the modern NBA. I mean, like, I think that I wasn't I wasn't old enough to appreciate how special that time was. And now, as kind of nostalgia kicks in across the NBA, I mean, how many Twitter accounts are dedicated to the NBA in the 90s? Like every I saw the other day, I think it was Devin Booker was talking about the warm-up jackets that NBA players in the 90s used to wear. And it's like, looking back on it, it's like, wow, this was kind of cool, but it just all seemed like a local team back in the 90s. 09 for me was my favorite time because I was old enough to realize that these things don't happen very often.
Yeah, and I was so when the Magic went to the finals in '09, Kevin, I was 13.
Yeah.
So that was my first true experience. I had been spoiled by my Florida Gators winning in college football and
Yeah.
basketball, the years prior to that, but I had never had a professional team. I'm not a huge NFL
Hmm.
fan of a team per se. So for the Magic to go to the finals in '09 was incredible for me, but I think that for me it was still the whole, like, I wasn't old enough to appreciate it. I
Yeah.
wasn't at that point that you were at in
Yeah.
'09. And so then if you would have told me, like, hey, you guys
Mhm.
are going to be rebuilding essentially
Yeah.
in the next couple years, and it's going to take about a decade. So
Yeah.
so
I'll,
yeah.
yeah. I'll
That's
tell you a story.
hopefully
So
taking a decade. We're still in the middle of the decade now. So
one of my favorite Magic games. Nobody cares about the series. Nobody cares about this game. But in '08, excuse me, in '08 we played the Pistons in the second round, and we beat the Raptors in the first round. And we took the Pistons. We played some competitive games against the Pistons. And there was a game, I want to say it was game 4, where it was the last possession. Hito made a bunch of huge threes. We were in the hunt. We could have won. And I remember being so excited because, like, there was a late possession. Hito made some huge three. And I remember being so excited because I was like, wow, the last like 13 years between 95 and '08, I assumed there weren't going to be big Magic games. Like, there was a time at one point where we thought the Magic were going to leave and go to Kansas City, if you're old enough to remember that. So the fact that there was 13 years between 95 and '08, and the fact that I had spent a lot of those times wondering whether or not there was ever going to be a huge game in Orlando again, wondering, at one point we thought that the Magic were going to leave for Kansas City. And so the fact that you had 13 years essentially in the wilderness. I mean, you had the T-Mac years and stuff like that. I think about that a lot now when the Magic do get to relevance, when they're like actual relevance, not winning game 1 in the first round. I mean, like competing for an Eastern Conference championship. It's going to be so much sweeter because I've been through that. I've been through a decade of mediocrity, and when you come out the other side of it, it's really special, and that's why I can't wait for that.
So the one guy who we hope is going to take the Magic there is the new head coach, Jamahl Mosley.
Yeah.
Obviously coming from Dallas and having, great things being said about him. What was your kind of knee-jerk reaction to Jamahl Mosley? Were you incredibly familiar with him, or much like us, we just didn't really have a clue, really what it was like with Jamahl Mosley, and now have grown to love him here in the, last week or so?
Yeah, so I have a friend who's a huge Mavericks fan, a former coworker, and he was telling me weeks ago that Mosley would be a home run hire. And, I saw some of his press conference yesterday, his virtual press conference, and he was talking about how he wants to meet these guys and connect with them on a human level before getting into the basketball. And I think that's how you win. And that's how you are a guy that people want to play for, and you build a culture. I don't know, even though we've tried to say we've had a culture for the last decade, I don't know what that is. We certainly didn't have a culture under Hennigan. We had a little bit of a culture under Clifford, but then the roster changed to the point that, I don't think that the young guys were going to buy into a culture that Steve Clifford was developing when he had no interest in developing that with those young guys. And so for Mosley, I think that everything he said has been correct so far. Now, let me put a huge caveat on that. I thought the Frank Vogel hire was going to be a home run. I thought the Steve Clifford hire was going to be a home run. I liked Jacques Vaughn at the time, even though I didn't know a lot about him. So you can only really make educated guesses when these things happen. But what I'll say is that I think that player development, you saw some of I think Tim McMahon reported this the other day, player development is going to be first and foremost. It's not going to be about winning this year. It's going to be with the amount of young talent we have. The only path forward is one of these guys. It's almost like a lottery ticket, even though, that's a weird way to look at it. But one of these guys has to become a superstar. And we've got 4 or 5 guys where, hey, maybe there's a path there, and then we're gonna have 2 lottery picks on top of it. And the priority should be the coach is in charge of taking those guys who we think have the best chance of developing into a superstar and doing everything we can to support them. That's it. That's the only thing that matters, because otherwise the ceiling is always going to be the 5 seed. Otherwise, it's, we've had so many guys, whether that's Tobias Harris, whether that's Victor Oladipo, that we either gave up too soon on, we didn't want to make them the franchise player, we didn't want to sign into an extension, whatever it is. Tobias was on a really manageable contract. Scott Skiles just hated him. And so player management and player development has been the worst part of this franchise. And Jamahl Mosley has to figure out how to change that culture and start building something real, and not just max out at winning game one of a playoff series, which has been the ceiling for a long time.
Well, like you said, a lot of the things that Mosley has said so far, and he actually appeared on the Orlando Magic Pod Squad, the podcast that the Magic put together with, Dante Marcatelli and George Galante, Jeff Turner. David Steele wasn't there, but you listen to that, and you listen to Jamahl Mosley go into more long form and be able to kind of expand on some of those thoughts that he shared during the press conference, and really, really encouraging, talking about how you can still kind of have the old school mentality and get these guys to do the old school things, but you have to kind of meet them where they are so they understand why they're doing those things. Again, what you alluded to, building that relationship first before you start getting into the basketball. So I was really encouraged by that, but you're right. The Magic's best chance moving forward is, yes, it's going to be Jamahl Mosley developing all of these guys to a certain extent, but you're hoping that one guy or a few guys are really going to rise above everyone else and become those all-star level type caliber talent. So speaking of which, and speaking of a lottery ticket, the Magic didn't have the most lottery luck that we had hoped for a few weeks ago. So we wanted to ask you, the Magic have the 5th and the 8th pick in the draft. Are there any prospects around those picks that you really are hoping in particular that the Magic will draft?
Well, we'll see how it develops. I was looking at Wingspan the other day, which obviously is the Magic front office thing. And
I heard Weltman say that the other day too.
Yeah, I saw Scotty Barnes. Scotty Barnes has a nice wingspan, so you can pencil him in for one of those picks. It's a great question. It's funny. I went and visited a friend of mine who's from Orlando in Greenwich Village a couple of weeks ago to watch the lottery. And when the 5th pick came down, I very loudly said the F word, and then he said the F word, and then I checked my phone and I had like 3 people text me just the F word. And then we were watching on his iPad because we were outside, and I could see the text messages from his friends in Orlando that were saying the same thing. It was like a movie scene. It was just like everybody was just like, "You got to be kidding me here! I can't believe this is happening." But listen, Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green appear to be the available superstars. Evan Mobley is right there, but I love Jalen Suggs, and if you had told me when I was watching the March Madness that Jalen Suggs would be on the Magic, I'd be extremely happy. And he is right now mocked around 4, but you never know that could go down. Scotty Barnes, everyone just keeps talking about it. Jonathan Kuminga is the same sort of deal. Everyone keeps mocking him to Orlando. And so I'm going to be happy with a couple of guys in there. It's not going to be Cade Cunningham, which I think that I had talked myself into because I really did think we were going to win the lottery. We've had such bad lottery luck that I just assumed the lottery gods would help us out this time, but I guess just not. I guess we're going to pay the tax on winning Shaq and Penny and Dwight for the rest of our lives.
That's what it feels like.
I just think that there's, listen, you look at the finals right now, look at Devin Booker and look at Giannis. Those guys were not top 4 picks. Chris Paul was not the first pick in the draft. If I'm not mistaken, there was a UNC bench player who went ahead of him in the draft, even though he obviously went top 5. So I think that there's ways to find a superstar here with 2 top 10 picks, and I'm not giving up. It's not going to be easy, but I'm not giving up.
I have a quick question for you before Luke gets to his question. When I sit and think about, the level of success that the Magic have had throughout the years, and Kevin, you kind of just alluded to it, does it make you sad at all or concerned at all that really the only time the Magic have had real tangible success is by just getting incredibly lucky and ending up with generational talents, not by like incredible team building, although I think Otis Smith does deserve a lot of credit for the Rashard Lewis signing and drafting Jameer. And
agree.
Well, that wasn't Otis, but you get what I'm saying. Does that make you sad? Because that makes me really, really sad to think about.
Well, my biggest question is what happened to us as a free agent destination? Because, okay, so the 90s roll around, and I know it was Shaq and Penny, but Horace Grant wanted to come here. Horace Grant wanted to live here. Horace Grant loves the city of Orlando. 5 years later, Tracy McGrady wanted to play here. Tim Duncan wanted to play here to the point he almost left. Grant Hill wanted to come here, live in a nice suburb. All those guys want to hang out, in beautiful weather in a place where there's no state income tax, play a bunch of golf. Like there's a reason a lot of athletes live in Orlando, right? And what I don't understand is what happened from, like, I remember the story that when Grant Hill was touring Orlando in houses, they had Tiger Woods just happened to walk by or whatever, right? Like it was that there used to be more of a community effort. And I just don't understand why we're considered the dregs of NBA destinations. I think a lot of people would love to live in Orlando. I view it the same way people view, I think Phoenix is on that. I just think that there's become this weird thing where no one thinks about Orlando as a place that guys want to play. And I just think that's false. And I think it's a great city to be in. And so if they start building something, I think we could go into recruitment mode and help here. I just feel like the Magic haven't had anything to write home about. We can be a premium NBA city if we give them something. And so I don't necessarily think that getting the first overall pick is the only path forward towards relevance. It does worry me, as you said, that the only times we've been legitimately good have come after winning the lottery. But I also think that there's a lot of ways to build a good NBA team. And I think the Magic can do it. It just starts with player development and taking the hard route, basically.
Yeah, and kind of to backtrack, and then actually we'll just go back into draft talk here, Kevin. When you were on the Orlando Magic UK podcast a few months back, a lot has changed since then. So I will definitely say that. But during that episode, you had talked about I'm cool with whatever happens in the draft. I just really don't know if I would want a point guard because we seem to be set at point guard.
Yeah.
Then my question kind of off that is, you said that, you kind of during March Madness fell in love with Jalen Suggs, which I think was the case for a lot of people. Jalen Suggs, though 6'4", primarily, has played point guard. He can obviously, slide over to the 2 if need be, but primarily his whole life he's been a point guard. Does that turn you away from Suggs at all if he were to fall and Kuminga's there or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say not, because beggars can't be choosers, quite frankly. And if we could add a franchise player or a guy who can have the potential to be a franchise player, I'd rather figure that out later rather than take a guy who's not as good. So yes, I have those worries. I also think, man, just watching him at Gonzaga, and I think that guy's a winner. Like, I really do think that he's kind of a badass. He's got the kind of culture that he seems like the kind of culture builder that I would like. And I think that, part of the problem with the Hennigan era is everybody was just a little too nice and there weren't any real jerks. And I've been around sports a long time, and I've been in a lot of locker rooms, and the best type of teams always have a good amount of, I guess you could say, jerks in the right direction. I'm not saying Suggs is one. I'm just saying he had an edge to him. I saw an edge to him when I watched March Madness, where he's a winner and he's going to put the team on his back. And I just think you can collect those guys and put them in a locker room, and everything can figure it out later. I mean, if the worst thing that happens is we get some value for Markelle Fultz down the road, I'm totally fine with that.
So you talked about edge. Have you seen, out of curiosity, that video of Jamahl Mosley talking to LeBron that surfaced? He's on the bench.
I haven't.
LeBron was when LeBron was in Miami. Mosley was on the bench as one of the coaches, and LeBron was talking, and Mosley just promptly told him, "Hey, shut the F up." And that was the extent of it. So we've got edge in Orlando, and as you said, bringing Suggs on board would definitely help the edge even more so. I think there's a lot of guys with a lot of personality there.
Definitely, and I think that you can get the edge can go in the wrong direction. Scott Skiles hating everybody on the roster was going in the wrong direction and saying, let's get Tobias Harris out of here as soon as possible. That was the arrow pointing in the wrong direction. But I think that can be channeled towards something good. And that's why it's so important to make the right hire with the head coach, to have all that energy channeling the right way.
we've talked a little bit about the draft and, who we might take at 5 and at 8. How much thought and how much hope have you put into the Magic potentially trading up and acquiring one of those guys that about a month ago we all really had our eye on, like Cade, like Jalen Green?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that I'd asked around about this, especially, and when I say asked around, I just mean that I asked people at the Ringer who are a lot smarter than me. I wasn't, I'm not texting Jeff Weltman or anything. But I think that there's a little more hope, maybe, if we wanted to get 3, possibly if we wanted to get into the Jalen Green, Evan Mobley zone. But I also feel like there's a chance that the draft falls to us in a pretty good way. And NBA teams talk themselves into bad players all the time. We've seen it. There's a reason Luka Doncic slipped in the draft. He didn't slip. Him and Trae Young did not slip to us, unfortunately, but they did slip just a little bit.
Very close.
Very, very close. The Magic way being one spot away from getting a generational talent. But unless if we have to give 5 and 8 and maybe even more to move up for 2 spots, I don't know. I mean, I'm viewing this as literal lottery tickets. There's a reason they call this a lottery, right?
Right. And
I think that being able to have 2 swings at getting a guy, unless you can get to 1, which it sounds like the Pistons are set, I would stand pat and go 5-8.
Yeah, and so talking about those guys that were once drafted to the Magic, traded to the Magic. The Magic have built a nice young core in Orlando that I honestly, maybe it's, it probably is because I'm biased, but I feel like nobody's talking about it, which seems to be the case with Orlando all the time. But
okay, let me stop you right there. They were really, the young core as it's been currently constructed was only post Vooch trade. So it's only a couple months. We were terrible for long stretches of that. Like, I don't know when we were supposed to talk about it, unless you're talking about me on the low post in like March. I'm the only person who had the opportunity to talk about the Magic's young core. And I tried, but it was just, I feel like the jury's still out on it, but I also feel like it's a little hard to say no one's talking about it when it's barely existed for all that long.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. I guess mainly I'm referring to J.I., Markelle, Chuma, Cole.
Yeah, I know.
Those guys. But, obviously the newcomers that you're referring to really that kind of have completed the young core is RJ and Wendell Carter Jr. essentially. But I guess my question then is, who is your favorite of the young core to maybe make those steps that we talked about becoming all-star caliber players one day? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's two different conversations. Cole Anthony, to me, I loved watching him play last year. I don't think he's going to become a superstar. I don't think he has a chance to become a superstar. But I do think when the Magic start winning, Cole Anthony is going to be a part of that. He's just going to be an auxiliary piece to it, if that makes sense. Chuma, I think you're looking at a guy who I think has a lot of upside, but again, not that superstar potential. I think of the guys who are here right now, it has to be Isaac turning into a legitimate defensive player of the year. Not every time we talk about Isaac, we say, oh, he could be a future defensive player of the year. I'm tired of saying that. He needs to develop into a guy in the next 2 years who's on defensive player of the year ballots. That is the requirement for the Magic to take the next step. Fultz, same way. Like we cannot just keep talking about his potential. He's got to actually start putting the team on his back. I love him. I love his development. I love his story. And I do think that's going to happen. I think both of those things are going to happen. RJ Hampton plays his ass off. I love him. I love his energy. Carter, I didn't really see enough of him to make a projection either way. Right. I think for super duper star status as like best player on a team that makes the Eastern Conference Finals, I think it's really just Isaac at this point who has the chance to develop into. I don't know if you guys see any other candidates.
I think we're all in agreement that it's J.I. is number one. Outside of that, it comes down to Markelle, and a lot of people question whether or not he's going to ever become a reliable jump shooter. But 2.5 years ago, people were wondering if the kid was ever going to be able to play basketball. Yep. So he's come so far. I'm not ready to write the jump shot off just yet. Is he ever going to be a 40% 3-point shooter? Probably not. If he can get anywhere near 35%, I really think we have a piece in him. The playmaking, the size, everything like that. He gets to the rim at will. So really excited about that. Luke, I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think with Markel, where I'm at with him and where I've been for a little while now, is that I think he will be a very good player for a very long time. I don't know that he ever reaches a superstar level. I hope he becomes an all-star at some point, but who knows? I think all the chips have been pushed to the table, and they're all on Isaac, in my opinion.
Yeah, Isaac, and then the 5th pick in this draft. Those are the two guys that have to be first team All NBA candidates within 3 years if the Magic are actually going to become a team worth watching.
Yeah, if not, we're doing all this over again in 3 to 4 years. So,
and at this point, I'm okay just scrapping it every few years. Like I'm done. I'm done being excited over the first game of a series we know we're going to lose in 5 games. I'm just done with it. And yeah. I thought for a long time. I don't think the process in any way was necessarily vindicated. But you at least see when the process is, 6-7 years in, why you do it. And Hennigan tried that a little bit, but he's made some massive whiffs. They got some bad lottery luck. Hennigan also strangely believed, and Josh Robbins reported this, that shooting would get better at when guys got to the pros, which we saw just was not the case for a lot of guys. And so he just bet on the wrong horse over and over and over again, whether that was different traits, different team building paths, whatever it was. We just failed. And so I don't know what you do except to say I'm tired of the idea of being on a path where the ceiling is a 5 seed.
Well, here's to Jeff Weltman and Jamahl Mosley leading us forward and out of mediocrity in the next few years. But
yes.
So Kevin, obviously, you host the Ringers NFL show. You write, you cover the NFL for the Ringer.
Yeah.
We'd be remiss if we didn't ask a few NFL questions. Luke,
absolutely.
You want to go first?
Yeah. So Kevin, I was doing my research and was looking through articles of Kevin.
Okay.
Okay. So in 2016. You wrote an article. This is what caught my eye because, like I said, I'm not a huge NFL guy.
Sure,
this is interesting to me. You wrote an article about the NFL has an age problem.
Oh, yeah.
And, essentially the subheadline was, the players are younger than ever, the football is worse than ever, and the causes aren't going away. Right. So at the time, you introduced me really to a stat that is really interesting by Football Outsiders, who tracks snap-weighted age. And in 2015, it was the lowest it had ever been at 26.6 years old. Now, I checked this season, it's 26.4. So it is lower than it was, back then when you wrote the article. Do you think that there is still, and, the age problem is an issue? Do you think that the NFL is in a worse place because we are among, the times where, players are the youngest on the field?
Yes and no. I think that particular problem really, really sucks for 27-year-old offensive linemen. So the way the NFL works is that you have a 4-year rookie deal. If you're a first-round pick, you have a 5th-year option, and then you have to sign a second contract. And what ended up happening was in 2011, when the new collective bargaining agreement came in, rookies went from being very expensive to being very cheap. And so teams will now just go ahead and roll the dice on a rookie rather than signing anybody who's not a star to a second contract. And so because of that, they'd rather go with a raw 23-year-old and save $6 million rather than re-signing their guys. So guys are leaving the league earlier than they could. There are guys who probably deserve second contracts who don't get them, or they get, essentially training camp invites and maybe a few $100,000 in guaranteed money, and they have to perform once they're there. So I think for the rank and file NFL player, it's still a problem. What I would say is that the difference between 2016 and now is who's come into the league since then. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, guys, super duper quarterbacks who came in really young, played really young, performed really, really young. And that has glossed over, I think, a lot of the problems that the NFL was having with play. Like the offensive line does, even though Super Bowl notwithstanding, the offensive line does not need to be as cohesive as it was 10 years ago. I think in that story, Mike McCarthy, the now Cowboys coach, who was the Packers coach back then, he used to say, it used to be that you go against these offensive lines and everybody would be 34 years old and they'd be mean and they'd have all these tricks up their sleeves and it was a nightmare to play against. And now everybody's 24 years old and they're a little more green and it's just a different game in the trenches and in other parts. And I think some veteran presence has been lost a little bit. But I also think when you look at those quarterbacks, some of these guys are just ready to play. So I do think it's a problem from a labor perspective. Yeah, it sucks to be a certain type of NFL player who's going out of the league earlier than they used to. But I also believe that the NFL with the quarterbacks and stuff like that is significantly more watchable than it was 5 years ago.
So that's really interesting, Kevin. But unlike Luke, I actually do have an NFL team that I root for, and I'm hoping to get some reassurance here. So I'm a big New York Giants fan.
Oh wow! Hey, we have Joe Judge is coming on Flying Coach.
That's incredible. I'll definitely be listening to that.
Sean
I
McVay
love Joe Judge
podcast. Yeah, so, he's coming on this week.
So this will be a 2-part question then. First, what do you think of Joe Judge and the job that he's done so far? But I feel like this season all comes down to Daniel Jones and whether or not he's going to take that leap. Can you give me any hope there? Because I'm a Daniel Jones believer. I feel like he's got a lot of talent, but he's got to hold on to the football. He's got to start to put things together this year. What do you think about Joe Judge and Daniel Jones and the Giants?
I just don't think Daniel Jones has all that much path to be a star. I don't want to be negative here. Although I have been negative on Daniel Jones in my own podcast, but I just think that I don't see the talent or the traits or the production that suggests he can have, Josh Allen's become the patron saint for every sort of inconsistent quarterback in their first 2 years, right? And look at Josh Allen, look at Josh Allen,
the third year. That's what we're looking for.
And there was a study done a couple of years ago by Pro Football Focus that actually put egg on my face because they said quarterbacks don't really get better from year 2 to year 3; they get better from year 1 to year 2. And then Josh Allen rewrote all the rules of what it meant to get better from year 2 to year 3. And now we have to sort of guard against that and say, oh, the jury's still out. But I do think Daniel Jones is more of the norm, where he was fumbling all the time. He couldn't hold on to the ball. He's turnover prone. And aside from that, I just didn't see a high ceiling. So you combine all of those things. Listen, he had that great run in the open field. He's had a few of those runs. He's an okay athlete. But I just don't think that the Giants supporting cast is going to be good enough to lift him up and make him any better than he should be. I don't think Jason Garrett's the kind of coach who would make him any better than he should be. And I don't think he's the type of quarterback that's going to rise above his circumstances. So I don't know what there is to be excited about with regards to the quarterback position. Joe Judge can be a good coach. I think there's people in New York who are really excited about him. And there was some buy-in there from Giants players last year, maybe more than people initially thought. But I don't know if Daniel Jones is a long-term quarterback option.
So it's going to be a rough fall for me, I guess.
It is
what Kevin is saying, because the Magic probably aren't going to be very good. Kevin doesn't think the Giants are going to be very good. So, I don't have a lot to look forward to for the rest of the year.
Do you have any other teams, Jonathan?
The Yankees are terrible.
Oh, wow. No, this is getting worse and worse.
Hubert Davis taking over at North Carolina
as
the head coach. Maybe he'll do a great job there. Apart from that, I mean, the Lightning just won the Stanley Cup, so that's great.
There you go.
Yeah, but apart from that, nothing would mean more to me than a Magic lifting the Larry O'Brien trophy, but we know that's not going to probably happen anytime soon. So, well, Kevin, I really wanted some hope there, and,
wow.
and you just couldn't give me even an ounce.
Can't believe it. Wow, this ended in a very dark place.
It did. But really, honestly, we really just appreciate your time joining the show. We've been looking forward to this for a really long time. I think fans are really going to get a kick out of it. So thank you. Just continue to represent the Magic really in the national media. You and Cerruti doing your best to do that. And hopefully in the next few years, we're going to have some more to root for with our Orlando Magic.
Love it. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Absolutely, guys. So for Kevin, Clark, and Luke, this has been Jonathan. You guys are listening to the Six Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See you. Thanks for listening to the Six Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and Stitcher to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. Please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It would really help us out a lot. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram @6manshow and like us on Facebook. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic.